tagging along with what's very memorable about Over the Garden Wall, I wanted to include a brief segment of the show's decision regarding the distinct apparel of the characters, and all the people that Wirt, Greg, and Beatrice meet along the way. So think of this episode as an expansive world building of the unknown, showcasing the knowledge and incredible artistry that went into this beloved show. So first, let's begin with Wirt and Greg, before diving into the history of the rest of the characters that make this show amazing. Greg's so-called outfit isn't too much of an outfit, but rather, stretching that sense of imagination that pretty much all kids have. Probably using whatever he could find, Greg uses his usual teapot that we see all the time as the trunk of an elephant, as he, switches it upside down so that the curve looks like an actual trunk. And since it's Halloween, Greg says it's a dead elephant. Not much of, an explanation, but hey, he's a kid using that imagination, and using that so-called, I wouldn't say so-called, that obvious imagination is very key to who he is and, how he reacts to, pretty much everything. He could be wearing something simple like he does with his overalls, but then since he has his teapot on, that means he is a dead elephant. So it's very cool to see that extra character development, I would say. For Wirt, he uses also whatever he can find, but in the upstairs attic. And he finds an old blue coat with gold buttons and a random, what I call a Santa's elf hat, simply because it has, white fluff around it originally. The blue coat that Wirt wears is apparently the design that World War II nurses wore. He probably wouldn't have caught that aspect of it when he was choosing it out, but I thought it was fun to note. And before getting into the inhabitants of the unknown, it's also fun to place Wirt and Greg's time period in the 1990s. Most likely the earlier years, so, 1990, 1992, 3, somewhere around there. Since Wirt makes a cassette tape for Sarah and listens to music with his, his big boxy, cassette player. And when they go to the Halloween party later on, in episode 9, the electronic music booms loudly, so we know that, the electronic genre has been there for a while, but, not for too long, but, popular at the time. Now, adding to the main trio of the group, Beatrice's outfit in her human form, one that we, don't see very much until about, like the last episode, I think, is one that could potentially resemble the dresses popular in Britain between the late 1700s and early 1800s, since her mother resembles an older time period while her father resembles a little bit of the later years. So that's why I kind of put late 1700s and early 1800s. Elegant dresses with extra frills might mean that Beatrice either was in a moderately, well-to-do family, or perhaps just, got lucky with a good hand-me-down dress. Either way, it goes into the importance of how people dressed in certain time periods. Lastly, I wanted to add the woodsman before getting into the separate episodes. From what I've read through, the woodsman's outfit, with the large coat, the tall hat, thick boots, reminds others of, like the mid-1800s, perhaps even close to the industrial era. And I agree with this sort of time period as it's, getting out of the Victorian era and closer to the big factory ages, pretty much. The outfit of the woodsman is, good for hard work out in the cold weather. And from his accent, it's difficult to, specifically, place it, especially with his, I wouldn't say, bland outfit, but it's, it's all black. So, of course, it's, like a simple coat, a simple hat. It's a little difficult to place it. As others in the unknown also have distinct accents throughout the episodes. But from what I've read, that from his outfit and voice, it's close to the the American industrial era. Now, different from what I've been doing in my previous episodes, I'll actually be dividing this specific episode into separate time periods from what I found researching online. I'm not too much of a history buff or a historian, so I had to do some research and some reading for this one, and most of it is regarding the stuff that I've found online. So let's begin first in about the 1600s, hundreds of years before Wirt and Greg enter the story. Now on this list is Adelaide, Ani Whispers, and Lorna. From how and where they live in their simple outfits, they can resemble the colonial period, perhaps before or somewhat during the time that Europeans began to lose their accents. Lorna has an accent, but Ani Whispers doesn't. So, and then Adelaide additionally does have a bit of a slight accent to it as well. But their outfits are simple, used for just, kind of around the house chores as, Lorna does. And Ani Whispers dressing a little bit of the same way. Nothing too fancy, and it's just kind of just better for bodily movements, I would say. Especially for Adelaide here, where she needs to, sew her traps together with yarn as well. Ani Whispers and Lorna barely have any furniture in the house, of course. And additionally, as I've said before, their fear of visitors adds to how the colonial period was in that same sense of terror after so many people left Europe. So, unknown place, unknown people, things like that. But, yeah. Next, we get to a few of the episodes, including Mad Love and Songs of the Dark Lantern. I placed them both in the mid-1700s and early 1800s, so around that. So, first, we'll start with Quincy Endicott and Marguerite Gray in the mid-1700s at the height of Georgian style and also the style of Rococo, pretty much taking storm in fashion. Quincy represents the nobility of his time, showcasing his wealth with not just his outfit, but his entire mansion. His outfit, though, included his Napoleonic breeches, long gaiters, Napoleonic frock coat, button-up dress shirt, leather shoes, and d'Orsay hat. Carrying candelabras throughout his exceedingly large and labyrinthine manner, laughing about his slipping mind despite his expansive wealth, and forgetting about, raising prize-winning peacocks, definitely places his time within these years, as they know that they are wealthy, and they don't really choose to, I guess, accept the fact that others might be suffering. So it's kind of that very wealthy nobleman, and even he doesn't realize that, okay, Wirt and Gregg aren't really his nephews, but, because his wealth is always on his mind. But the other group that I chose to place in the late 1700s to early 1800s was the people in the Dark Lantern, or the tavern, I should say. The Songs of the Dark Lantern would be the episode. From what I read, both the outfits and the professions of the inhabitants inside matched the time where people relied heavily on what they did as a job to live somewhat decently. So let's get into the people of the Dark Lantern, or at least most of them. First, the dress, apron, and shawl of the tavern keeper, along with her use of the straw broom, demonstrates her loyalty and ownership of the tavern itself, including her berating Beatrice for bad luck, and wondering who these strangers are in the first place so that they don't bring any more unsavory characters with them. And though he's not too terrible or unsavory, the highwayman is I would say a rather suspicious character from the way that he dresses, as he does in a red-styled gnomish outfit with a black mask and a red cap. Based on his behavior and clothing, it's clearly seen that people don't really get too close to him. On the flip side, the toy maker is a jovial old man wearing a green apron with several pockets to store his tools while he paints and tinkers with small toys, which is a great addition, as we see in the very beginning of episode 1 with all the flashbacks with that, I forget what it was called, the iris lens, I think it was, that the toy maker is placing all these figures upon a crowded shelf. Next there is the master, and he wears a maroon frock coat, a gray waistcoat, gray pants, a white ascot, white dress shirt with collars up, and black riding boots. And he also has styled brown hair and light skin. And he keeps his apprentice on a rope tied around his waist. Again, as stated before, professions were regarded with a much higher importance than today's standards, so during that time it would only make sense to have an apprentice for whatever profession the master had at the current time. And with his almost, I would say his almost nobility status, because with the way that he dresses and the way that he talks, not to a lot of people, but with that very stern and very stoic voice, almost like monotone voice. it feels like he has better things that he could be doing with his time, and probably with the apprentice along with him at all times, he probably isn't in the best mood. So, and now I could go on with the others, but I think the ones that I've listed here have like a sort of higher importance, as they give Wirt and Greg some more direction and inspiration for them before they went off to rescue Beatrice. From the late 1800s to the early 1900s, we get to Miss Langtry and her father, Mr. Langtry, along with Jimmy Brown, who is Miss Langtry's fiance. Since this episode is, dedicated to the educational side of the story when it comes to Over the Garden Wall, Miss Langtry's simple brown dress with a neat bow tie and a swooping hairstyle showcases the neatness and decency of small-town schoolhouses of the day, where discipline was needed as multiple students across various grade levels had to be taught daily. Mr. Langtry dresses in a large black waistcoat with a tall black hat, asserting his dominance as he storms into the school classroom to demand the uplifting songs to stop. Of course, underneath the enormous coat is actually just a skinny old man with a trembling voice, wondering when the fortune of his life savings and decisions would finally go right for a change. Lastly, Jimmy Brown, Miss Langtry's fiancé, is found out to be inside the gorilla suit that chased the animal students around. Underneath, he wears a blue button-up shirt and overalls, and he also styles a very curved blonde mustache and well-combed hair. It demonstrates the willingness to join a fast-paced job like the circus, especially for when the times when money was needed to sustain a small family, but where the job could literally be anything, including a circus. Next up are the frogs in the jovial episode of Lullaby in Frogland. Now, this one is placed in the early 1900s, but not quite the middle, with their dapper outfits and dresses that still occasionally leaned towards the Edwardian period, which was around the 18 to 1900s period. The simpler versions of suits that the gentle frogs wear, along with the bubble pipes that they smoke, lean towards the more, industrial side of where simple pastimes like, smoking and stuff like that, distracted those who were part of the hard-working class. Additionally, the steamboat where they drift upon is a result of the changing times when these sort of boats were improved more for human transportation, or rather, for this setting, frog transportation. And, of course, last but not least, are the residents in Pottsfield, in Hard Times at the Husk and Bee. This one is placed around the Great Depression, around the 1930s. And now this was a time where many deaths occurred along the long roads that kind of stretched across the country, crossing through small towns and through what was called a potter's field. So literally Pottsfield and Potter's Field. So it only makes sense that the Pottsfield in the show represents those who were, either dead because of natural causes, disease, or even just, along the road. Normally, I'd like to highlight the apparel of the townsfolk, as this is kind of like what the episode's about, along with time periods. But since they all dress up in pumpkins, it's a little difficult to truly pinpoint that style. The town of Skeletons also represents the unity and tight connections in a small town of the day, highlighting the importance of community in their way of plentiful harvest that they share together, along with the festivals of fellowship. So now that we've talked about, the apparel and time periods of the inhabitants in the unknown, we're a step closer to explore the inner workings of what the strange realm is all about. Multiple visitors from all steps of life, including separate time periods, all under the strange spell of the beast, the elusive, dark, and ominous villain of the show. Trapping them all in the same woods, surrounded by the mysterious mist, the beast keeps everyone captive until his own dark secret is revealed at the end. And that's actually kind of all I had for this episode, and it might be a little shorter, but I kind of figured I would add some more stuff, as this is still kind of considered a deep dive series. Some of them are short, some of them are long. I think from now on it'll be a little bit longer episodes as I finish up the series. I know that I will be talking about the musical aspect of the show in the next couple episodes, along with the ultimate last episode of the theories and kind of final thoughts of what I think about the show personally. So this will be like the last short episode before I get into the longer ones, which I'm very excited for, especially because it is the musical side of the show, which I'm going to demonstrate next. So yeah, let me know if you guys have any further comments about the apparel of Over the Garden Wall and everything that they dress and style, and if I probably missed anything, or maybe if I placed some people in the wrong time period. Again, this was kind of based on like what I found online and kind of just read through, and most of it I definitely there's a lot of agreeable stuff that people read through and write on time periods. And it's curious to see that all of the inhabitants of Over the Garden Wall in each specific episode are based on a specific time period, which of course leads into the theories aspect. But it's great to see a show that demonstrates a lot of separate time periods. I don't think that a lot of shows really do that in a very condensed time period, as this is only like a little over an hour throughout the whole show. So it's just it amazes me of all the small details. But yeah, if you guys want me to expand on anything, like especially for like time periods, I could get into like the building structures and like the way that they behave and things like that. I could always do a separate time period piece if you guys really want me to. But let me know in the comments if you guys want me to do that. Otherwise, I would just say to just stay tuned, subscribe if you'd like. I would greatly appreciate it. I don't do a lot of the Over the Garden Wall deep dive series often, as I have other projects on my channel, including Exploring Arda, which is my Tolkien-centered podcast, Through the Wardrobe, which is my Narrative Narnia series, this Over the Garden Wall series, and I also have some metal-themed albums that I've been writing the lyrics and recording my vocals for. That's been another project that I've added on to myself. So yeah, I would appreciate you guys if you checked it out. And I think until next time, we'll just venture back into the unknown and see what other secrets are revealed in the woods. Farewell.